short-term rental ordinance that was requested by Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Practices because they have, in their language, something called the tourist top rooming house, and we have something in our ordinances called the tourist rooming house. So basically to differentiate our tourist rooming house from the tourist rooming house that's regulated by the state. So that's clarification, but as you see, I gave you a memo concerning concerns from certain residents who retain counsel who have concerns about our rental ordinance, essentially dealing with the inspection, the guest log, the Knox boxes, and our rental fees. So what I'm doing is I'm working with staff right now. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd approve this language change right now if you're so inclined, but just be aware that there's possibly some other changes that are gonna be coming forward. So I'm gonna look for direction for you to say, yeah, I want you to look into this, meet with staff, and then meet with the concerned citizens or their attorneys with these, and come back with a report to you as far as what I think. Some of the requests that they're asking for, I'm not sure going to have really an effect on our short-term rental ordinance. So I'll give you a report on what those are. Certainly we have to look at our licensing fee, because when we passed it, we said we would look at it in relation to how much administrative costs there are. You can't have a license fee that's punitive. You can't have something that says, we're gonna charge $1 million for you to get this license fee in order to restrict them from being able to do the business. The statute's already saying you can't restrict them from doing that. So what we want to do is do an analysis to be able to make sure that the costs that we're charging for a license fee are in line with really what our administrative costs are. And then we'll look at the inspection. I mean, some of the inspections, and obviously when I speak with them, I want to explain to them why we pass those particular provisions and see if we can work out a resolution to it. So I guess I'm just looking for direction. If you have some other input on that, I mean, if you tell me if there's no way we'll clear this fight, you know, that's fine. But on the other hand, if you say, let's see what the resolution can be, then we'll go forward. So it's really two parts to this.
And one motion?
Well, two motions probably.
Okay. I'll use another Civil War reference. It's clear as mud, correct? Any questions, any concerns? Any questions, any concerns? Yes, Alderman Skates?
So do we still have the public comments?
Yeah.
Portion of this, okay, I just wondered.
Yes, Commissioner Pajot?
So this is really just a name change to the document, changing from short-term rental.
Essentially, that's all.
But then, Dan, did I hear you say that you want to have then time to look at more substantive issues that you want to come back to?
Yeah, what I want to do is I want to meet with the people who have these concerns or their representatives and say, okay, what can we do to work out, and then come back to you with a report and say, and I'll come back with a recommendation. Here's what we do. This is why we do it this way, and then proceed from there.
That is your recommendation.
Yes, Mr. Wally?
To help clear it up, first of the two possible votes will be, this was generated before we received the request from their attorney. So we worked on this for about a month and a half, and then very recently we received the request from the other folks.
And when you say this, what are you talking about?
Oh, this is the verbiage change to our ordinance from tourist room housing to short-term rental.
There are people listening on the radio.
And to clear it up, I mean,
There you go. Mr. Slavny, anything from you on this?
Sounds like a good idea to address the changes about the name as soon as possible.
Commissioner Gibbs?
If I'm not mistaken, the state also defines these as short-term rentals and not, Didn't we talk about that?
They've got a category called tourist rooming house, and what was happening were people from Lake Geneva were calling them about the tourist rooming house rather than calling us, and there was confusion. There was just confusion, and they brought a whole staff of people down here to talk to us about it.
Okay.
And I said, this is all you want? And they said, that's all we wanted, just change the names.
Recommendation, okay, okay.
You can't do that kind of stuff over the phone.
No. Or on the radio.
It took 4 of them.
Is there anyone from the audience who wishes to speak on this matter?
No,
No?
please do.
There is. Wonderful.
You'll do the right thing.
I don't mean to be a pain in the butt, but I'm Marissa Geezy, 528 Sage Street. When you talk about short-term rental and tourist roaming houses, what's the difference between bed and breakfast in the tourist roaming house versus a short-term rental? Because now you're talking about people that are coming in that are staying at the bed and breakfast versus people who are renting apartments, but then have transitional people coming in and renting rooms from them, maybe a couple days, maybe a week, maybe a couple months. You never know who's coming and going. You got the drug house also going on, running their rooms out from time to time. So I guess I'm just confused and would like some clearance on the issue. Thank you.
That's a terrific question. And I'll leave it up to either our planner or our attorney to address it, but there are 3 separate distinctions.
Yeah.
Short straw?
Doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean,
Right next door.
bed and breakfasts are a completely different animal. They're a conditional use that are permitted under our ordinances. One of the requirements are that the people who are renting out in a bed and breakfast, they have to be the residents of that property. So that's a conditional use that we've allowed forever and ever. Our short-term rentals are something that we had to adapt to as a result of state legislation that says you cannot restrict people from being able to rent out their homes on a short-term basis, and they set certain parameters that we've adopted into our short-term residential units. The term tourist rooming houses, they have a different definition up at the state. They deal with sort of rooming houses that are normally in commercial areas, like they're not like hotels, but they're rooming houses, they're group homes, that sort of thing. We'd use the term tourist rooming house because we'd had that adopted in our ordinances for a long time and utilized that language. So there's 3 different things, and there's 3 different categories, and there's 3 different laws and ordinances that apply to it. Still clear as mud?
Well, no, there's still some clarifications on some issues, but I'm not gonna get into it tonight. Thank you.
Mike?
Right, in a nutshell, the state has those 3 categories, and they have different state laws pertaining to each, and this change will bring us into alignment with the use of their term to minimize confusion, given the fact there are 3 different categories of closely related things. We should be as consistent as possible.
Any further comments from the public? Yes, Commissioner Corjola?
Just for Dan or Mike, just so I'm clear for my personal benefit, short-term rental versus tourist room house. You said tourist room is more clustering and commercial, or I'm still not clear exactly what the difference is between the 2. Just if someone could shed some light on it to help me understand.
Mr. Slavin?
Right, so in a tourist rooming house, people can rent for a day or any length of time, and they are seen as primarily a commercial operation on a full-time basis. A short-term rental is what the state allows any property owner to use their home or apartment unit for, that's restricted they allow cities and villages to make restrictions on those that require you have to rent those for at least 6 days, and that you cannot put those up for rent for more than 180 days. So they are accessory uses to the primary use of the home rather than a full-time business operation.
An example of a tourist rooming house would be the Downtowner, I believe it's called, on Main Street, right on the creek next to the north side of Parvetti's. There are people in and out of there. They can rent it for a weekend, they can rent it for one night, however they want to do it. But the house next door to you, if they want to rent that out, there are, on a short-term basis, there's a much stricter rule there, and they can only do it for 180 continuous days. So they couldn't do it for 3 months in the summer and then 3 months over Christmas break. And then they would also have to rent it out for at minimum 6 days at a time. So the idea is to try to keep from having the bachelor parties renting out your house next door. That's right.
Thank you.
All right. All right, I'll entertain a motion regarding the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second? All right, the motion was made by Alderman Skates and seconded by Commissioner Sarko to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing is closed. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the verbiage change as presented.
On what? Let's,
I'm sorry, to amend the existing wording of the tourist rooming house ordinance to identify short-term rental ordinance.
awesome. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
All right. The motion was made by Alderman Skates and seconded by Commissioner Gibbs to amend the existing wording of the tourist rooming house ordinance to identify short-term rental ordinance as described in the attached ordinance with changes. Anything you want to say?
No, I don't think so.
Wonderful. Anyone else? All right, the motion was made and seconded to recommend the amendment of the existing wording of the tourist rooming house ordinance to identify short-term rental ordinance. Let's use the voting machine for our votes.
Retired.
That passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And then I would make a recommendation that we just direct staff, including the city attorney, to review our current structure and review with the, I say opposing, but complainant, to review and to come back to us with recommendations
All right, is there a
at a
second?
later time. Second.
He's still talking. All right. The motion was made by Alderman Skates and seconded by Commissioner Stanley. Did you do that right? Okay. To direct staff to meet with the attorneys for certain residents who have filed a complaint regarding our short-term rental ordinance and bring the results back to the planning commission. Anything else we want to add to that? Is that clear enough? All right. There's a motion and a second to direct staff to meet with the attorneys for certain residents who filed a complaint regarding our short-term rental ordinance and bring the results back to the planning commission. Let's use the voting machine to record our votes.
Help them change the ordinance. So that it's-
That passes unanimously.